Live and broadcasting.
Okay, here we go. So on the table are packets with the minutes for the last two meetings and the agenda. There are extra copies of the agenda if anyone is interested. And we have a pretty full agenda tonight. So first, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. And we need to fill the table with two, and I would like to ask or recommend that Jeff and Heather, who are part of the Open Space Committee, since this is one of the agenda items, come to the table and be allowed to vote this evening. Is there a motion?
Heather and who?
Heather and Jeff Dvorak. Heather.
Oh, is Jeff not on my list?
He's on the Open Space Committee.
Oh, okay. But
No, he is not an alternate.
he's not an
Oh,
alternate.
but
So he can come to the table, he just
he
can't
can come
vote.
to the table, he can't vote,
Right.
but Heather can vote.
And we need Andy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll move to make Heather and Andy voting members for tonight's meeting.
Okay, and then Jeff, you can pull a chair up. Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
If you don't want to, Patrick can come. What do you want to do?
You want me to?
I'll amend the motion to appoint Heather and Patrick as
Patrick.
voting members
Is
for
there a
tonight's meeting.
second to the motion? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Patrick and Heather. And Jeff, yes. Yeah, okay, okay. So, the first item on our agenda, as usual, is the review of the minutes. As you know, we tabled the October minutes because there was a question about the language in one section of the minutes. I believe it was section 5D, if I'm correct. Yes, when we discussed the proposal from Kevin Breen for the work on the Stevens Field, my notes and Matt's notes reflect exactly what's in the minutes, that we said we would take up to $3,000 from the Conservation Fund because it's over the $75,000. We have an offer of a donation of $1,000, and then the balance of $400 would come from our budget. There were no changes in the proposal. It was exactly $4,400. So I would like to move that we approve the language in the October minutes since it reflected the notes of two people in that discussion. Is
I
there?
actually checked the video recording too, and that was accurate.
Okay, great. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes for October.
I move to approve the minutes for the October meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain. One abstention.
Second. You second.
Okay, the next item in your packet or on the agenda are the minutes from November 13. It was in your packet.
Excuse me, who abstained from October?
Heather.
Thank you.
If it matters, I was a voting member for that meeting, so I think I can make that.
You can make, you
Yeah.
can vote.
Because you have a
Yeah.
copy to look at that, yes, yeah. I have a couple of corrections. If in the first paragraph, Emma's last name is Laham. And under members absent, Doug Cowie was absent.
Is he a member or an alternate?
He's an alternate. Oh, he's an alternate.
Yeah, I don't think we need to list that.
So would you say alternate absent Doug Cowie? Can we do that?
You can.
Okay.
You're
In,
going to do that, you'll need to add me as well. I wasn't here.
Yeah, why don't we just leave it at the members?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, leave it at the members. Down in number 3, Rob's last name, just to correct the spelling, Wofchuck.
Item 3.
Item 3. Sometimes things happen so fast, it's hard to keep up with the details or the spelling. And in item 4G, which is the budget that was approved, it's 12704. And that is it. Any other changes, corrections from anyone else? No? No? Is there a motion, if there are no, a motion to approve the minutes as as corrected?
I motion to approve the minutes as amended or corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
I
That's,
abstain.
I abstain as well.
Wasn't, you
Oh,
weren't here.
2 abstentions.
I
Okay.
need to abstain too. That was the one I
Three.
wasn't at.
Owing to the fact that I wasn't here.
1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 4, so we still have a quorum, okay.
Okay.
I wanted to make an announcement. So we've approved October and November. I want to thank Matt for serving as Secretary of the Conservation Commission since last year, since early 2023, I believe.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years.
About 2 years. It's very challenging to produce the minutes. Sometimes things go by so fast. There's a lot of detail to get in there that's important to record, and I think he's done a fabulous job. So I want to congratulate him and thank him on behalf of the commission. Before I say that he would like to step aside as an officer. Remain on the board for now and commission for now, but just not take on the role as secretary.
Yeah, and I've talked to Michelle about whether she, and asked her whether she would be willing to step into that role. She is, and for which I very greatly thank you. And so I would like to nominate her to become secretary effective January 1, 2025. If there's anyone else that is interested, obviously, feel free to speak.
Any discussion, or is there a second to the nomination?
I'll second it.
All in favor of appointing Michelle as Secretary of the Conservation Commission?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Michelle.
So thank you, by the way, for this.
You're
kind
welcome.
words.
You're welcome. That will be written into the minutes, acknowledging your good service.
If you say so.
Yes, you're doing the minutes. You
I'm
should.
doing the minutes, so if they're missing when you get them, you'll know.
We'll amend those, so make
Yeah,
sure.
right.
The next item is bills and reimbursements. We have no new bills to pay from this last month, but we did get a nice thank you from Barbara Richter at NHACC for paying our dues and rejoining the Conservation Commission for the state. She thinks it's very valuable that commissions support the work of the NHACC, and I remember mentioning that when we went to the annual meeting in November in Pembroke. She mentioned that she had about 137 requests to her office during the year. I'm sure I've been responsible for at least 24 of those, being a newcomer, so I appreciate her help. She's been very helpful to me and to the commission, so I think they do a good job. So a nice thank you from them. And that's all for bills and reimbursements. I'd like to do a little promo before I introduce our speaker. As you may know that right now, Andy is Recreation Director, I'm Chair of Conservation, and Deb Briscoe is Chair of the Trails Committee. So this work kind of has some work where we should work together. We're similar fields, similar interests. So we've been trying to get together to do walks on properties to understand more about the trails and the existing properties and to come up with some ideas possibly that we can use in the future. So Andy and Deb Briscoe have been very helpful in doing that. So while we were at our last walk at Swayze School last week, I believe, it was a beautiful walk. Land was gorgeous. The trails were well maintained. We had maybe 3 or 4 conversations about why couldn't we do this or this needs this. So it's been very helpful. And in that process, while we were on the walk, or this was the walk at the rec center, Andy started to talk about the proposal to do some work on the fields. And I asked him to come here to just give us an overview on the work they want to do on the playing fields, just so that we're informed because we seem to have some related interests. So thank you, Andy, for being here tonight.
I want to thank everyone for having me here tonight. I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll do my best to keep it short and sweet for you. Sorry. And, plug this in. It should work. Worked for me earlier. There we go. All right. So I'm just gonna apologize in advance. As soon as you throw a marker and a screen and a board in front of me, the inner coach starts coming out. So if I'm rambling or I'm a little messy with this, just let me know, and
You gonna talk X's and O's?
I can if you want me to. Yeah. So the current makeup or situation we're in with the playing fields, and this is an older picture, but this is pretty accurate to how the fields are represented over there. When I first started here, for the most part, it was just rec programs and some minor usage from some local organizations, the Exeter Soccers and baseballs and whatnot. Well, in my time here, and it's been I think an added benefit to the community and to the rec department, but we've increased the foot traffic in the community and using our facilities. Well, more foot traffic comes with, damage. And we're at the point now where our lower fields, this area here, is getting to the point where, not for recreational use, but for the organizations using our fields. I don't know why. Go away. The fields need to be in a certain condition. Just like everyone here, we have a board that we report to, so on and so forth. These organizations, it's the same for them. And if these fields aren't to a level of play, they have to pull their usage from us. And the reason why that's so important is because rec-wise, we can only offer sport programs, up to certain ages pending the sport. And we rely on the Exeter Soccers, lacrosses, the Seacoast flag footballs, and whatnot for those student athletes to continue their play. And if these fields continue to lose its quality, they're going to pull, and now we're going to have Brentwood coaches, Brentwood teams, and Brentwood families that will probably have to travel to other SAU 16 districts or maybe even non-SAU 16 towns. And a good example of that, if you were able to do the summer site walk with me, this is, I think, a good representation of kind of the conditions of the lower field here. As you can see in this area here, I mean, just in basic play, this is how you're going to get rolled ankles, torn knees, ACLs, things like that. We had a game last year from Exeter Soccer where, the ref came out and literally ended the game because according to their standards of play, the fields weren't safe enough. Our general rec programs, soccer, t-ball, we can operate under this here, but if we want to continue to provide the services for Brentwood residents in order to be able to host their own practices and games and not having to go in their backyard or again, traveling to a different community, 20, 30 minutes away for a Brentwood team to have practice. So the issue we're having is, I don't care about you anymore. Okay. Let's get rid of that. So if you haven't been down there, I refer to them as upper and lower. Where the upper and lower meet is right here, right at that hill line. And what's happening is because what we really need to do to increase the quality of the fields is we need to put in irrigation. But before we do that, we need to put in drainage because these lower fields are having major, major flooding problems. So we all know what winter into spring looks like. It's super muddy. We might get a late storm or whatnot. And as you can see, my freehand's not the best, so take this measurement here with a grain of salt. But where it's highlighted in blue here is where it is unplayable. And if you're looking at it, that's cutting right into a diamond here, a soccer field here, and obviously play here. And this is what I mean by the coach in me. So we're losing a solid month and a half of field usage just waiting for the fields to naturally dry and take care of itself. And with that happening, the department is losing out on revenue, but also it is a hindrance on even rec programs, but also for these other organizations. And if we're already having water issues over there. I don't know about you, but I think it would be unwise of us to put in a whole sprinkler system in there to just add more water to the mix. So I met with Gary, I'm having a hard time with his last name off the top of my head, but he's
Cowan?
over from Hillside. Hillside Landscaping. He's been working on our fields for 20 plus years, so he's pretty familiar with the landscape and what it takes to manage these fields. And basically for the drainage portion, which rounding up was about, we're estimating about an $8,000 expense. I would have to get that quote updated. It's been a little bit since we've gotten that. I think it was summertime when we last got that. But the idea is we're putting in drainage right along the hill here where the upper and lower field meet. And the idea is that we dig a culvert so the water can disperse into this area here. Again, if you're not too familiar with the facilities, parking is also an issue. It's very limited. So it's very important that we direct the water flow underneath the parking there, because we can't damage already what is limited. But also you should expect the same where we do have some of our trails and what we use for the Peach Project and Haunted Walk and whatnot. But in order to get proper usage of the fields, again, we would need disbursement on this end. We have a water tank. That line's not supposed to be there. We have a water tank. Now it's just drawing everything. I'm sorry. We have a water tank right about in here. That current tank, why are you doing that? Oh my goodness. That current tank, and when I spoke with Gary, can irrigate about half the field here. And that cost, rounding up, was roughly $26,000. So when you put the two combined, it's roughly a $34,000 expense. Same thing, I probably should get those numbers updated. It's been summertime since we last spoke with them. If we needed to do the full field, there would have to be an additional tank, which obviously would increase the cost greatly. But under the current structures of what we already have, I believe and firmly believe, and the Rec Commission feels the same way. Now let's see if we can get rid of all this.
I was just studying it.
Yeah, is with the proper drainage and already using the tank that we have there to irrigate at least half of the field, and this would be the half we would prioritize because that's where most of that playing takes place. Obviously, we use both diamonds regularly, but again, we believe with the current water tank and the drainage getting put in, that you will see the fields come back to life, and that we wouldn't have the full need of needing a second tank to come out to also keep costs down. And as Becky stated earlier, we did some awesome site walks back in the fall time, and a week ago, and it was our fall walk where we were starting to have some of these conversations. And I also understand that there's going to be a conservation impact to a project like this, and hence why I'm here tonight. And I wanted to present to all of you where the rec department is at, and this is something that I would call a short-term goal or objective that we're hoping to achieve within the next year or so. We've had a lot of other projects and whatnot, and if you're interested as to what those projects are or what is in store in the future, I highly recommend everyone to please come down to our rec meetings. We normally do the fourth Wednesday of every month. Fourth Wednesday is a little important this month, so we're going to push it to January. But I do recommend everyone to come down and talk to us as to what's going on. And this is the general premise of kind of where we're at on how we can properly manage the fields to keep our current users and Brentwood families in Brentwood, but also increasing the level of safe facilities. There's a huge level of safety. I know I should have saved it. They always say you should always save your documents. I should have saved that picture. But if we keep going on the path that we're on, it's only a matter of time until our whole fields look like that, and they just become unusable even for rec programs. So I said I'd keep this short and sweet. That's kind of where I'm at. So that's it.
So you're proposing a budget allocation to the select board to get this done? Is that your plan?
Like I said, I would like to get updated numbers, and normally you want to reach out to a multitude of
Right.
vendors so you can get that perfect price point there. But depending on how we go down the road of how to fund it, like other larger scale projects we've done in the past, and the majority of the time I've been here, we've always relied on impact fees for those type of things. So I don't think we're necessarily looking to add it into the general fund and or the rec budget itself. But this is what we would call a large scale project we're hoping to get done in the next 1 to 2 years.
And so you could self-fund it through impact fees, you think?
We believe so. I mean, that's
Good.
anywhere between our light towers. We have 3. We also share with with highway, police, any other
Right.
town department that needs it. Those 3 towers was roughly $30,000. We were able to do that through impact fees. We were able to get all new decking and remodel the BRC through the use of impact fees. It's always been my goal to try to kind of have that be the first avenue if the revolving account can't absorb that cost, because from my perspective, the last thing I want to do is to be presenting this to BudCom and or the select board on our general budget.
Sure, sure. Just a quick question. By the way, John Madden would be proud of you for your telestrator.
Oh, thank you.
Do the fields naturally slope toward the planned drainage location?
Yeah, it's in going back to the upper and the lower. Let's get rid of a lot of this prettiness here. So where a lot of our spectators will come is literally in this area where I had that first line.
Okay,
Because it's a little decline that goes into and slopes and levels out on the lower field there. So as you can imagine, as the fields get pushed out based off of usage, now the spectators are pushing themselves out, and we're just losing the usage of the lower field. The upper field does not have that problem because it's more elevated and
Yeah.
everything is running off from the upper field into the lower field.
yeah, I know the upper field drains that way, having chased a few softballs over right field there.
Yeah.
But I was curious about the lower fields. Do they also naturally slope toward
Yeah.
Just-
where your drainage?
Just based off of my just walking the facilities and stuff, in this bracket here is where you are going to see most of the damage.
Got it.
And this is
So
where
that's
you're
where the
gonna see
water sits.
all the
Yeah.
pulling. Now, don't get me wrong, we have damage in other parts of the
Yeah.
field just because we have increased participation. When
Right.
I was here, when I first started here, like I said, it was rec programs and Exeter soccer. Well, now we have Seacoast flag football, we have Exeter lacrosse,
Yep.
and we have a cricket program that's a part of the rec department now. So this is where, let's say, 75 to 90% of the damage is taking place. But again, the additional foot traffic along with the natural slope and decline is affecting other areas of the field. But this is where the brunt end of it is.
So the only environmental issue then, to me, seems to be would the planned drainage
It would be
have
the
any
disbursement.
impact
Which direction did you say you prefer the drainage to end up going?
Nope.
up and down, right?
So the idea is that we're trying to hug where the upper and lower field meets
Yes,
as much as
But
possible.
where would the outflow go?
And the flow or the disbursement, the idea is this way. We would dig a culvert, so it
Okay.
wouldn't affect the parking on this
Alright.
side.
Are the fields fertilized, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so I have both the prime wetlands map up here and the conservation property map, and that side of that is a prime wetlands on the other side of the access road to the power lines, which would be of concern to this board.
There's vernal pool, as well as, some endangered species identified there on that northern section as well.
Yep.
I've played on this field. I think I'm the closest to this age, and I was, gosh, only 7 years ago, playing Little League there. I suppose it's still Little League. I don't know. Playing baseball there. I do recognize I have been there when it is wet, and I think that regrading and the drainage is an honorable goal. What are your impact fees in a given year?
I would need to get that number updated to give you an accurate, answer here. But on average, we're typically in the 60 to 80 range on a year-to-year basis. Now, we spent a big chunk of that on a project over here. what we have left, that's what I need to get updated. And to my knowledge, the rec impact account was gonna slow down over the next 48 months or 2 years, and then would pick back up from there. So there's the question of the funding that, you know, whether it's through the 100% usage of impact or, you know, hopefully grants, fundraising, whatever that may be. I would love to put all those puzzle pieces together, but the idea is that the rec department is funding this like we have with the majority of our large scale projects, and that's 100% through the use of impact fees. That's going to be our first goal through that process.
That's what I like to hear, and I'm curious as to why there's a $30,000 appropriations in the capital reserve fund budget for 2026 for this project then, on the proposed capital improvements from the town.
I update that on a year-to-year basis, and when I put that in the plan, that's probably at the time where I felt like that fell in place. We also had, just in this past year, we've had other things in the works in our CIP plan, in the sense of like, well, like the windows and our furnace, those are large-scale projects.
Yeah.
The wheels are in motion there. So when you kind of crossing things off the list, things get pushed up the list as well.
And having done the, that for conservation, some of that is speculation. What do you anticipate you will incur in each year, but it's not necessarily set in stone. So it's just an advance warning or sort of a placeholder for some of these things.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Patrick, the only environmental concern is the impact of rainwater runoff into the natural area.
Rainwater would be one thing, but if you're constantly irrigating on top of fertilizing, I would have a bit more concern of the constant addition of runoff water to the vernal pool system. Also, if it is runoff on the south side, if the impact on the archery trails there would be a concern of the Conservation Commission.
Bob?
Is there a survey and engineered drawing of what you're proposing to do?
I haven't had an engineer come out. I walked the site with Gary Cohen over from Hillside Landscaping, again, because he's the one that works on our fields, and he was the one that basically put me on the path of the direction of this, the likelihood of this is where ultimately we would have to end up. Again, I just went to the guy that we contract with the last 20 plus years. If we're gonna do something like this, I'm hoping that we get extra eyeballs and hands on it. So we're calculated with this project, and we're not just, digging a moat and then we mess something up, right?
I'd like to see a survey and an engineered plan that has looked at the prime wetlands and other impacts as well before, because I think we've raised some good issues here, but I don't know that we've identified them all for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the Concom should do that. The rec department can do that.
Well, you're still at the early stage of really putting this all together. You
Where
have to go
this is
back,
early
so-
stage, yeah,
So that could be done in the next phase.
through the process, yeah,
Sure,
absolutely.
in the process. So, fertilizer, okay. Any other questions or points to raise?
I would just say that I was a coach and served on the board of the Exeter Junior Baseball League for many years. And we get a lot of volunteers, engineers and contractors to do work like this.
Okay,
And we paid for virtually all of it with fees from operations, impact fees and other things. So if the fields need it, then absolutely we should do it, but it needs to be done kind of, and I know this is fledgling, but it needs to be done right.
okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else from audience or, no? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so
Appreciate that.
much.
Appreciate that. And we've made some notes here, so I'll drop off the notes to you for our
Perfect.
concerns. Okay. And one thing, just to comment on this, there are so many meetings in town. Every night of the week, there's one or two going on. It is hard for any resident to pay attention to all of those meetings. So working together or sharing information instead of being in silos, I think is very important for all the all the departments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So hence having a guest here. Okay, thank you. Let me just look at my, where am I here? Item number 4, I just wanted to report that when Martin or Northam did the presentation to us about the South Road subdivision putting a driveway in, I signed the permit. We're all set with the DES. A letter was sent to the planning board and the select board noting our decision on that, so they're all in place. Everything is organized. That was the follow-up that was required by us. As far as the Fuller easement update, in talking to Paul yesterday, he said it's still scheduled for a final signing on December 20 by the select board, as far as you know.
We'll probably sign the deed at the next meeting.
Oh, so next select board meeting, okay.
Right, but the closing won't take place.
Oh, okay,
That'll just be for advance.
okay.
And then the funds are ready and get some wiring instructions. It looks like that's coming in a little bit less than what we had anticipated.
Yeah.
It was 250 that was anticipated as our share. It's going to end up being 241 and some change. Don't ask me the change.
Thank you, Paul. It's a lot of detail at the end during the process and end, so I'm appreciative of the participation and the help. Next item, Kevin Breen completed the work at the Stevens Field. If you ever go over there, it is clear. The overhang limbs are gone. The fallen trees are gone. The invasives that were populating the field are mowed down. His invoice has been paid thanks to Conservation Fund, our budget, and a volunteer who came forward with a healthy donation. And Kevin volunteered to come back in the spring to do a quick check, see if there's any cleanup or final work to be done. He would do that on a volunteer basis. So I think it looks really good. If you haven't been over there, it's really a change, so you should take a look at that. Lise is not here tonight. She's going to give an update on the monitoring. She's done a number with some of us properties. I don't have the total list, but I know they're in progress, and she's usually good about finishing up in time to complete all the 24 monitoring. So more on that at the next meeting. Conservation Stewardship Fund, just follow up to our last meeting. The issue of establishing a Conservation Stewardship Fund to, in the future, pay any expenses for work on existing easements, any legal expense, any cleanup, as a possible, having a fund to be able to do that down the road. To that end, Rob Wolfchuk posted something on NHAC and the listserv asking of other towns what they have done. And so far as I know, he's had one response, and that's from Milton. And it was just said they've divided up their conservation fund into different purposes. The conservation fund doesn't earn any income, so you're not making any money on that as the fund fills up. But he didn't say they directly created any capital reserve fund for that. So I think we're going to table that until we learn more and when Rob can be here to give a report. So I'll say tabled to next year, which makes January. We'll see what happens. Next item is a report from the Open Space Committee. This is just a general report. They met on November 20, had a discussion about planning the next communication through the newsletter and postings on Facebook, what to do to outreach to those who did not receive the first letter inviting them to the October program. And Anna Boudreau, our recently hired consultant, was at the meeting, and we had a good conversation about brainstorming ways to keep conservation in people's minds, keeping up with technology and recording any discussions with potential interested parties, possibly scheduling some community activities, trail walk, bird watching, public speaking series that would continue to engage the community at all different age levels. So that was the general work of the Open Space Committee. Next item,
Where is that?
that's item F.
That was F?
That was F.
Oh, that was F.
It was a new
Okay.
F.
That was, yeah. My typing is terrible, so you're going to see problems in this.
Well, it just said speaker February, so
Yeah, well, the next one is G, Speaker February.
It's a new F.
It's a new
I
F.
see. So E,
E2.
okay. so
Okay.
Let's go back to
Okay.
E sub 1,
Yes,
Open Space Committee.
Open Space Committee.
Yeah.
So we've got that report. Okay, the next item is our ongoing effort to provide speakers at our meetings for a brief presentation at the beginning of our session on some aspect of conservation, some developments in the world of conservation. And we have someone booked for January. Thank you, Bob. That's Andrew Fisk from American Rivers. And so he's already on the schedule, and he's confirmed that. And Rob has booked someone for March. But we had a conversation with Anna Boudreau, our consultant, about possibly coming in and doing an overview of the easement process to the Conservation Board. How much depth or how long you want that to be, just to give us a better understanding of the steps in the process and the requirements, so we're more informed as a board. So I'm happy to talk to Anna, the Open Space Committee. Anyone is welcome to help design what kind of presentation. She has done that with a number of towns and with the NHACC, like Easement 101. So we'll present a plan in January, or an idea what would happen at that session. So we'll keep you informed on that. Yes.
Let me ask if there's anything before.
Yes.
Like, is there anything, any of those topics that you want Anna to talk about? Like, how comfortable are you with easement 101, or what was one of the things we talked about was easement language? Like, where do you see value in getting some additional information?
Well, I've never been through the easement process at all. So I think that would be to learn. I don't know how many of you have.
Once.
And I know how complicated it is.
Yeah.
So I think getting a general overview of that would be super helpful.
I think one of my interests is how you introduce the possibility of encouraging a landowner to continue to do an easement. Is that landowner's goals? How do you present that project to that person or that family? Benefits, long-term benefits for the family, just sort of an overview, how you initiate that conversation and work to develop that relationship.
I don't know if people care about like the legal aspects of the easement or not. I mean, it could get a little dry.
It's mind-boggling, I know.
Yeah, it could get a little dry, but put people to sleep.
Okay. So maybe it could be a two-part thing, something in February, an overview, 101, and then in April, a little more detail about different aspects, more intensity in that?
Yeah, I think an overview would be good, and then as subtopics come up, or as they're flagged as areas of interest,
Okay,
she could do that.
okay. So maybe a two-part, okay? So I'll put those notes together and share them with her, and then ask her to put together some thoughts, and we'll share it with the committee, with the commission. Okay, an update on Pickpocket Dam. As you know, there was a meeting last evening in Exeter, and I've invited Eric to give us a brief overview of what the content of that meeting was, about the update on the plan to remove Pickpocket Dam. Thank you, Eric. Yes.
Yes, so they did hold their, it's really sort of being construed as a planning meeting, one of several that I think they intend to have. There wasn't a whole lot of new information provided. First half of the meeting was spent kind of going through the timeline from the history, through the study that they did of the various options, and then why they chose dam removal, essentially. And there wasn't really, people tried to have some input into the questions around that, but it wasn't really on the table at that point. So I will say I had expected, they said the slides would be posted, and I was going to offer some details from those slides because I didn't take separate notes, but they're not up yet. So in general, where the project stands is they did not get the grant that they had applied for last year from NOAA, which would have funded the full removal. So they consider themselves in the fundraising, I think the terminology they used, phase of the project right now. They listed, I think, 3 different grant funding sources that they're looking to. I believe one of which is specific to dam removal. The other 2 can be used for other purposes, but it was pretty clear that if they get those, they're going to go for them in terms of dam removal. They outlined the various permits that they're going to have to apply for. That was the detail I was hoping to get out of the slide presentation. But it's a lot of what you would expect in terms of the construction phase, the environmental phase. There's a heritage and cultural phase that they have to go through, which I believe they said would be the place where Brentwood would have specifically a seat at the table, because we are in, the dam is in our town, even though it's not owned by our town. So that sort of has a different set of rules than the decisions about what they do with the dam itself. And, the immediate butters will have, of the dam will have more input, and then I believe the butters along the river will basically receive notices of what's going on. They did some breakout sessions, and but it sort of, after the meeting, it didn't really consolidate into these breakout sessions, but the 3 areas were environmental impacts and permitting, sediment management and erosion, and engineering design are the 3 things. They're obviously, talking about, once the dam's out, how to sculpt, if you will, the river so that it has a bottom that, has a natural impact to it. But basically, it's more or less where it was left after the last meeting to take the dam out. I will say I raised one point. I did some looking back to sort of understand the hazard ratings, and this probably isn't necessarily a conservation question, but the idea of the dam being a high hazard dam, when I look back at the original, switch to it, look back at the original dam breach analysis that was done way back when the dam was first declared high hazard, it stated that the way it is worded is they basically say the flows were modeled without the dam breach to provide a baseline to compare the additional impacts caused by breach of the Pickpocket Dam. That was only done at the 100-year flood level, and the 100-year flood level is a not a high hazard, is a significant, they call it, hazard. So it's not nothing, but it's basically the flood we had back in 2006 was roughly a 100-year flood. And, the dam held, obviously, the downstream impacts didn't happen. But the dam breach analysis basically shows, when you look at their numbers, that if the dam were to fail in a 100-year storm, it would reach this first floor level, a tenth of a foot basically over one house is what it amounts to, but it technically crosses that line. They didn't do the differential with the dam failing or not at the 1,000-year level, which is the new rules were passed. New rules were passed in May of last year, May 24th, for dam hazard assessment. They went from what was called the 1,000-year standard design event, they call it, replaced what was 2.5 times a 100-year flood. So 2.5 times the total amount of water that we saw in 2006 is what it takes to meet the high hazard standard. And what I saw looking at the numbers was, at the high hazard level, the dam will have no impact whatsoever, fail or not fail, on the flooding and all the damage that they assessed would happen. the roads would be over top, the houses would be well over their first floor level. And so I tried to raise the point and ask, why wasn't it done at the 1,000-year level differential between the dam failing or not? Because they would have shown that the dam has no relevance whether it falls or not. And the answer I got basically was, it's not required. The requirement is the 100-year level. I don't know why they went the extra step to check the 1,000-year level, because obviously if you fail the 100-year level, you're going to fail the 1,000-year level flood. So my point was, I don't think it really ever should have been assessed at high hazard, and then all the cost numbers that went into that differential analysis where removal was the cheapest should have been done with water that's 2.5, the water that they checked was 2.5 times more water than is what it should have been assessed at. In a nutshell, the folks that are the decision makers sort of indicated to me that they were not of any interest to revisit the question. They have an appeal process. I tried to suggest as due diligence that they should exercise it to see before they go to the voters and ask for a couple of $2 million.
Is that their plan? Are they doing a warrant in the
They
town?
have to do a warrant.
They have to do a
yeah,
warrant, okay.
and I believe unless they find a source that requires no public funding, and then I'm not really sure what whether a warrant is or isn't. So they're planning to put that on in March. It wasn't clear. There were a couple of questions asked about what's going to be proposed, because they won't know what the actual funding is at that point. And so I believe they're probably going to propose it, at the full funding level from the town, and then backfill it if they get grants.
Is there a time frame for when the project would commence and complete?
Yeah, so that was outlined in the thing. I can forward it to you once it's posted. But basically 2027, sort of by the end of 2027, I think the second quarter of, I believe the second quarter of that year is when the actual, demolition of the dam would take place, and then
remediation.
and then the remediation is basically the rest of that year. So, I mean, basically, it seems like it's moving forward. Like I said, I felt like there was a reasonable cause to sort of go back, because if it's not high hazard and at significant hazard, they're only 1/10 of 1 foot over the floor of one house. It seemed like there would be basis to appeal, not just the high hazard, but even a significant hazard. But it doesn't sound like there was a lot of appetite for it.
Any questions from anyone on this? No?
Wish I had other things to share, but that's kind of the status of things. And
Okay.
they did note that they will keep Brentwood in the loop and
Yeah, we asked for that. Yes.
Was there any additional comment about the impact on the wetlands and the impound in town, like the environmental impact? That was something we asked about in our letter.
No, I mean, it's obviously part of the permitting. It's going to be an alteration that's going to cause a wetland impact. So it will be part of the permitting process. And everyone will get to weigh in on those impacts. It will come before the committee that I'm on. The Ezra Lack will have a chance to weigh in on it. Obviously it's going to have a big impact on wetlands.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some pretty clear maps that they put out that showed, what the river boundaries are now versus what they'll look like, after this. And essentially when this is done, it will be sort of a line on the map rather than sort of a big area of wetlands on the map. But, so all that will be checked. There's some things about, what types of, vegetation and stuff they're going to put back to, cover those areas and restore those areas once it's out. So, there may be some input along the way in that realm. But
Anything else from anyone? Yes, Doug. Would you introduce, I guess you have to introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Doug Marino, 26 Mill Pond Road, planning board member. Would you be able to forward those details off to Kristen?
we're planning, sure. Yeah, no, it's like I said, it was a pretty clear slide presentation that sort of outlined the history.
We'll be very
Right,
Yeah.
right, yep.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you
Sure.
very much. Just a couple of other quick items on here. Town Forest has been on our agenda a couple of times, questions about the use of the Town Forest Capital Management Fund that was created in 2006 after the report was done by Charlie Marino on the forest lands in Brentwood. The fund is under the trustees of the trust funds. Barings had asked, why hasn't this fund been used for 5 years? Do we need to keep this fund? That question was taken to the select board, and the select board decided to retain the fund. And I was invited, because the only report that still exists for this town forest land management was in the conservation files. So I did a little research and again presented this morning at their meeting more background information on which properties are included in that report, the outline of what the report recommended for each of the properties as far as thinning of trees, trail management, marking, borders, et cetera. And the committee was appreciative of that information. I mentioned that 3 of us have gone on some walks, and that Andy Gray, Debbie Briscoe, and I, and we're going to put some ideas together and submit that as an update on the report that was done by Moreno in 2006. I'll keep you posted on that, but they were just continuing to seek more information to know what to do with that fund. The proposal for forestry or logging in any of those properties is based on a 10 to 15-year cycle, and trying to determine if it has been used in the past and where we are in those cycles is one of the next steps. So it's a continuing research process to make sure that that report isn't neglected or forgotten. And that report was contracted by the select board. They asked for that, so it should be used if there has relevance. So we'll
You're
keep you
talking about
posted.
A new report.
A new report. It might be updated. I've heard a lot recently and from different conservation organizations that the standards for forest management back in 2000 have evolved with all the research that's done on the underground life of trees, old trees, and the fungi and all of those things that happen underground. So that may make a difference in that report. So that would be something to possibly update.
What was the fund again?
It was
How much was it?
It was, the board voted in '06 to establish the Forest Management Capital Reserve Fund for $5,000. The value now is about $7,000 and change. And to my knowledge, it has not been used consistently or effectively over the last 20 years. So to do a little more research on that and report to the trustees of the trust funds and to the select board. Okay? My hands will be sticky now if I take that, so I'm gonna set it aside. I just don't want that in my house, so please,
Please eat it.
please eat that up so I don't have to take it home. Thank you. Yes? Well, that's interesting. I have a report here that I did for the trustees of the trust funds. And the language is, it was established in 2006. Wayne St. Hilaire was a source for that information. The plan has 3 objectives: to serve as a reference of forest land and natural resources, to define management objectives for each property, and the 3 properties were Rec, Town Forest, and Little Forest, which is now Split Rock. The report followed the report defined the following forest management objectives for each property: forest health and productivity, timber income, identified reserve areas, wildlife habitat, woodland access, recreational use, education, wetlands protection. But it's not really clear in the minutes of the select board if they were focusing just on the town forest or on all 3 properties. So we do a little bit more research to determine. It could be, if, and that has to be determined because the minutes only say timber the language to establish a CR for the implementation of our forestry plan, ... to be used in future timbering. So what's left out of those notes, what details, if anyone ever solidified that, is the question. But I can send you a copy of the report that I submitted to the trustees this morning of the trust funds. So that's trustees of the trust funds. Okay, new business. Open Space Committee, this was on the agenda. The request is to, I'll actually give you some background before I go that far. A property has come to the attention of the Open Space Committee in sort of a unusual way. And for someone who might be considering eliminating that property from their estate. So to follow up on this, members of the committee, Open Space Committee, walked the property to evaluate its conservation features. According to the conversation and what happened over that hour-and-a-half period, that property meets the criteria for strategic conservation values established by the commission. And in discussion with NHACC on a confidential matter, this is confidential, and with our consultant, the first step to see how we want to proceed is to have an appraisal on the property. So I'm coming to the commission tonight to ask for a motion to utilize up to $8,000 from the Conservation Fund for an appraisal and associated other costs for this property.
What property?
We have to go to non.
We'd have to go to non-public if you have any questions or need any more details on this, because the property owners have asked for confidentiality, and that is something that is possible in the 91AA-3, that if it's a matter of finances, we have the right to do that in non-public until we get permission from the owners to go public.
I would like to know what property we're considering.
Okay, so I will need a motion. If there are questions, because this will involve a negotiation, a financial negotiation, more information and any details will only be discussed in non-public. To go into non-public for 91A-3 requires a voice vote by the commission.
Can we do that at the end of the meeting?
We can do that at the end of the meeting. So I just want to make then I'll table this for now. And I will make just a couple of announcements and then we can go into non-public. FYI, there's some tree cutting going on Prescott Road because Eversource is installing utilities for the new home that's being built right after the bridge where the road curves. They're going to approach that from the middle road side of Prescott Road and install the utility poles. They've got them all marked. They've done some tree cutting. Planning board was only involved because it involved a scenic road, but we were not involved because it's required to have utilities for new construction. Second point, Tractor Supply submitted an application to the planning board for a second sign because they're going to have a proposed garden center and they need a second sign to announce that. That went before the planning board. The annual Peach Project is this coming weekend. Please support that. That money, the proceeds goes to the New Hampshire Food Bank. This is the 6th annual. It's over at the Rec Center, Friday and Saturday. And I want to welcome Patrick back from his Galapagos Island adventure for your master's degree. Wasn't it
Yeah, it was a competition for the University of New Hampshire.
Yep, so he had the trip awarded to the Galapagos for, I think, 10 days or 8 days?
Yes, it was 10 days. Yeah.
Yes, so we'll hear more about that possibly in a little story in the newsletter.
Sounds awfully like bragging, which I don't want.
No,
Madam Chair.
no. Are there any other announcements of things going on in town? Yes, Patrick.
I attended the last meeting of the Energy Committee, and they are in the process of working with the county if we can get any access to the electricity that the county intends to generate with the solar panel array that they're constructing behind new construction at the county farm. Beyond that, the Energy Advisory Committee is working in some loose partnership form with Exeter on some window heat catching project that they're doing over there at the town level, which is open to all members. And
Interesting.
there was supposed to be some write-up going out at some point from them.
Oh.
Not my responsibility, but just
Okay.
to throw it out there from
Okay.
here. But beyond that, that's all I have from them.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, and congratulations again on your award. So, and the next meeting, just to the last business is, the next meeting would be Wednesday, January 8th. That's just general announcements. Yes, Bob?
Um, One of the items you mentioned was the sign at
Tractor Supply,
you said?
yes,
And you mentioned a garden center,
yes.
and, you know, I don't know if they're proposing to build a garden center, or if they say they have one already, or what the impacts of a garden center might be to the
Mhm.
ground and surface water in that area. But Patrick raised some really good points in the presentation earlier about the conservation, I mean, about the
Yeah, yeah,
record fields.
Yeah.
And I think they would apply to this property as well.
okay.
So if they're gonna have a sign for a garden center, that means they're gonna have a garden center. And I'd like to know more about that.
Okay, well, I can read you what the planning board public notice was that was on the town website. Tractor Supply Company located at 437 125 has applied for a variance from the Brentwood sign zoning ordinance. The applicant's request is to allow a second building-mounted sign where the ordinance allows only one such sign. The reason for the request is to offer guidance towards the facility's garden center. Signage of this type is often exempted from municipal sign regulations because it's not intended as only advertisement, but also serves to direct folks around the property.
Yeah, that, if I'm not mistaken, that garden center already exists.
It may,
It's mostly used for storing items and
Yeah.
not growing items either.
that could be, that, those details are not in this.
Pavers and
Doug?
fire pits and stuff. Yes, sir. Oh, no, I won't. Thank you, though.
Is it going before ZBA on Monday? It's going before ZBA on Monday? Okay. Okay,
One more.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick?
Commend the fire department for their work in saving the conservation land out behind Pine Road, and then also that land was up for consideration a while ago. I don't know if
Yeah.
the value of it has changed in a way that might be beneficial to this commission.
Interesting. We happen to know the people who run, Kevin Johnston, who runs the yogurt place on Pine Road, and he said at one time during the fire, there were 6 tanker trucks lined up on his property.
Yeah.
So I haven't been back there to see the damage or to know what happened there, but you say it abutted conservation land in Exeter?
Correct.
Okay.
It butts the land that ends up being the Connor farm, but it's one large chunk
Okay,
out there.
okay.
But I know we were kind of looking out that way. I don't know if that had any impact on potential sale availability.
It's still for sale. I think it was 1.3 million when it was up for sale. The sign is still there. The select board, about a year ago, voted not to pursue that property because somewhere in the original manual for handbook for conservation, it said to not pursue properties that are under commercial classification. But I don't know. The owner was not willing to subdivide it, so that would take it out of commercial. So that's where it stands. I don't know. But they also own property on Middle Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's for sale, or that's,
I don't know if the lots are different. Well, so
it's 2 different parcels.
I don't actually know if they're owned by the same person either.
They are.
Okay.
They are, yeah. So those are my general announcements. So we can go back to the issue that's tabled. So I would like a motion to go into non-public 91A-3, and this requires for financial reasons, and this requires a voice vote.
Can you just articulate the financial reasons, because I'm not, where are you in?
We're on.
No, I know where you are on the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in 91,
91A. Number 3, it pertains to
colon free,
financial information that may give someone an advantage and harm.
okay, so you're specifically talking about the exception in, sorry, specifically talking about the exception in D, which is
Oh,
the
D.
consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal
Yes.
property, which
Yes.
if discussed in public would
Yes.
likely benefit a party
Yes,
or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the
Yes.
general community.
yes, that's the point. I had the wrong reference.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because
Just didn't get far enough.
you need to
Okay.
specifically cite the reference before
Okay,
going
so
into.
Matt, in your minutes, you will cite that reference.
It's RSA 91,
91A3D.
Dash aid.
section 3. Yep, you got it. It's
Two-
2D. 2D.
2D?
Roman 2. D.
I'm sorry, 91A-3, Roman 2D.
Correct.
Got it.
You need to use this minutes anyways when you go into non-public.
Is that the form?
That's the form, yeah.
Never used to, that must be new.
Well, it's a helpful guide. You don't
is.
have to use it, but it's a helpful
Yeah,
guide.
we will. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
So, is there a motion to go into non-public based on those criteria?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, we'll do a voice vote. Bob?
Hang on.
Yes, aye.
Hang on,
Yes.
hang on.
Michelle, I. Matt, I. Becky, I.
Heather, I.
Aye.
And Paul?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So we're excusing the audience, but since Robin and Jeff are on the Open Space Committee and this is part of their proposal, they are welcome to stay.
Would the alternates also be allowed to?
The alternates should be allowed to stay.
Not us, I'm talking the ones in the gallery. Would they
Oh.
not be?
I
They-
would think.
on
I,
this?
I would think so, since,
Meaning, in the event that they're
yeah,
having
in
to-
the event that they
They are.
eventually have a vote in this process, yes.
Make sure you take some,
Yes, I do. But don't read them yet. I want to do a little, turn them face down until we,
the suspense is killing me.
Turn off our mics too? or-
turn
Yeah,
off
we
your
have to
mics.
shut, yeah, we have to.
We have to go offline.